morning, everyone. Today's Monday, May 22nd, and I'm Melanie Morris, also known as the Lady in the Yellow Jacket. Remember, you can catch me here every Monday night at 7:30 p.m., so set your DVRs. This show also re-airs on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. So we've got a great show for you tonight. Hopefully you've been watching my shows. Now, if you have a show idea for me or something you think I should be covering, by all means, please tweet me at Melanie Morris TV. It's May, it's National Bike Month, and if you've been following me, I've been doing all cycling shows this month. As many of you may know, I'm a long-distance rider. I ride about 100 miles a week in the fair weather, not in the rain, not in the cold, not in the snow. On Saturdays, I ride anywhere from 40 to 80 miles, and I love it. I love riding, and I'm in love with riding. And I could talk about riding all day long and all night long. And today's show is something I wished I did not have to talk about. In the early morning hours on Sunday, April 30th, two gentlemen were leaving a midnight movie from Coolidge Corner, and one of those gentlemen was struck and killed by a car. It was a hit-and-run driver. He actually fled the scene going the wrong way down a one-way street in order to get away. And 2 days later, that cyclist died. His name is Richard Archer. And today we're going to call him Rick. We're going to talk about his life. And today I have two of his good friends here with me. And we're going to learn more about Rich and the things he stood for. So with me tonight, I have Shah Paul. Thank you, Shah, for coming in tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Joe King.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Rick.
Yeah.
Tell me about Rick. How did you guys meet?
We met actually there was a series of bicycle events, we like to call them, more of like scavenger hunts called Alley Cats. After an Alley Cat, there was a party, like the post-race party, and a friend of ours introduced us, which to me was just like, oh yeah, here's this guy, he seems really nice. But Rick decided then that we were going to be friends, and so, you know, we became friends.
Okay. And Joe, what about you? How did you meet?
So I met Rick through one of Shah's Facebook threads. Shah and I have been friends for a long time, and I decided that I was going to be friends with Rick based on our interaction on that thread. And so when he got back into town, we made a plan to meet up.
Great, great. Now, I know, Shah, you were with Rick that night.
Yes.
What happened?
So we were riding, we had just entered the Back Bay from Kenmore, and we were riding down Commonwealth Avenue, and so when Mass Ave splits Com Ave, the bike lane changes from one side of road to the other. So the safe thing to do at that point, instead of crossing against flowing traffic, because there's an underpass, we just stayed as far to the right. And as it seemed like we might have space to get over to the left into the bike lane, we could see lights coming up from behind us. Before Rick was able to react to the lights, the car had already driven through him and had turned onto Berkeley Street. Yeah, they didn't slow down. I didn't see brake lights until the car got to Berkeley Street.
And then that's when the car went the wrong way down Berkeley.
Correct.
In order to get away. Right. So we also want to say that that car was dumped in the parking garage underneath the Boston Common, and eventually, and obviously, the driver was arrested. So I know you were at the movies that night. Whose plan was it to go to the movies?
Our friend Jimbo, it was his birthday.
Okay.
And so we had a little get together at his house, and they're playing Point Break at the Coolidge at midnight. And if you've ever been with a group of friends and you're looking for something to do, like sometimes 80s action movies are or 90s, like just campy action movies are like the best things to do. And so, you know, a group of us went over there, and you know, we watched the movie together. And it's one of those atmospheres that's just really fun, where, you know, people are making jokes to the screen and quoting the movie and everything. And so, it was a party atmosphere. It was a good time.
It's party atmosphere. Now, were you at the movie also, Joe?
I wasn't. I was. I moved that day.
You moved that day.
So I was exhausted. Under other circumstances, I would have been there though.
Okay. So on May 10th, there was the ghost bike ceremony for Richard Archer. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the ghost bike ceremony, it's a ceremony where a white bike is attached to a pole. There's a bike that's painted white, spray painted white. It's attached to a pole, and it's in memory of a cyclist that has died near that spot. And you both spoke at the ghost bike ceremony. How'd you feel? How'd you feel that day?
It was an odd mixture of emotions. You know, because on the one hand, there's that many people that are there to, you know, to acknowledge like the life of this person who you felt like was really great. But also like you wouldn't need that many people there for your friend if your friend was still with you.
What about you, Joe? How'd you feel that day?
It was surreal. It was, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I'm doing this. So there's a reporter. Okay, well, I'll talk to them and I'll try to make sure that they hear what I want them to hear and what I want them to know about this. It was just surreal, but it was amazing to see the love that showed up there, and I've never seen anything like that before myself, not firsthand.
You've never seen anything like that before. So if any of you all want to see the ghost bike ceremony, I was actually there and I recorded it, and I put together a piece. It's on my YouTube channel, which is Melanie Morris TV. It's 28 minutes. You can see the entire ceremony. And after the ceremony, more than 300 cyclists rode down to City Hall for a budget planning meeting. Woo! Yeah. So let's talk about that. You know, they were talking about transportation, allocating transportation money. And has anything happened since that meeting? Any good things happened? I know we talked a lot about bike lanes and cyclists. You know, we need to have more money allocated towards cyclists so that we can be safe on the streets just like everyone else. Nothing
that I have heard yet in terms of allocating the money. A lot of it has been for Project Zero. But they, like, this was almost like a jumping off point, like where now there are more city councilors talking about this money and, you know, trying to get this money allocated. Because one thing that I did learn in listening to this is the money is really, really poorly managed. And, you know, the way they spend it is just sort of backwards in a lot of ways. And so, you know, although we haven't heard anything yet, we're really hopeful that, you know, there will be positive changes.
Okay. Go ahead.
I mean, the meeting at City Hall ended up being an extension of the vigil. And that was one of the things that was so incredible about it. Most of the city councilors mentioned it, all the ones that I saw at least, and then we spoke. And my hope, my great hope, is that doesn't just end up being, in retrospect, a symbolic thing. We showed up for a reason. We showed up to try to convince the people who have the power to make these decisions to show us that they care, and to do it in a meaningful way by put money toward cycling infrastructure in the city, and toward programs that are going to change drivers' attitudes and behaviors.
You know, there was Councilman Tito Jackson. You know, I thought he had one of the best lines. He says, you know, obviously this is a vigil. These people are here mourning the loss of their friend, and I feel uncomfortable. You know, he said he felt uncomfortable. I don't know if you remembered him saying that. And I said, you know what? That's good, because we want to make you feel uncomfortable. You should feel uncomfortable until this is fixed. Because, you know, we were down there 2 years ago for Dr. Anita Kerman. You know, some of the same people talking about some of the same things. And, you know, we're back 2 years later talking about the same thing. You know, someone else has died. So we do. We want to make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, we want to make them feel uncomfortable so that we don't have to feel like we need to go and have another vigil there in 2 years. Like, you know, this isn't something that should have to be a recurring situation. And it's just something that is also just so easily remedied as long as there's the proper will to do it.
So a couple of years, 2 years ago at the Dr. Anita Kerman transportation meeting or city hall meeting, I talked with Commissioner Fiandaca, and I asked her to come on the show. I did not follow up with her, but I am going to follow up with her this time. And I am going to ask her to come on because with the dollars that they were talking about, I mean, the revenue that's even made from parking tickets and meters
Just the meter fund.
was like in excess of $100 million. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. And we wanted to make sure that cyclists are included when those dollars are allocated so that we can feel safe as well. So let's get back to Rick. What's one thing you want the world to know about Rick that maybe people don't know, or if there's somebody out there who's watching and they are watching the show and maybe they knew him but they didn't know him personally?
Well, I mean, anybody who knew Rick knew that he was somebody that believed that your personal life, your life, like each individual, your life is so much easier when you're just good to other people. Just something that simple like that. That was Rick's thing, you know. And like one day, you know, I was having a bad day, and I was like mean to some random person who just asked me for directions. He was like, that took way more effort than it would be to just tell him to make a left and 2 rights. And you know, and he's right. Like, and so you know, where I would love to just, you know, be able to say, yeah, like everybody should know like that Rick was just beautiful. Like in addition to being really handsome, he was also just a lovely person. But I think it's also important to just, you know, it takes so little effort to be nice to other people. And if you just carry yourself that way, like, I'm really lazy. I do whatever it takes the least amount of effort possible. And like, he's right. Like, it's just so much easier to just be nice to people. So yeah, that's what I would like to pass on.
Okay. Joe, is there something that you knew about Rick that, you know, you want the world to know about him?
Absolutely. Rick and I did we had those deep, hours-long backyard or porch talks. And we had a pretty siloed relationship. You know, we hung out one-on-one for really real things. And the world lost a searcher and a finder. Rick was brave. He was emotionally brave. And I personally value that so much. And in my life, it's been incredibly rare to meet someone who was as emotionally brave as Rick Archer. He was only 29. What breaks my heart is that I'm not going to know him as a 40-year-old man because he was heading somewhere. He was a finder. So.
And you and Rick shared PTSD, right?
Correct. Complex PTSD specifically, I think. So Rick and I met around the time that I had finished intensive therapy for PTSD. I'd gotten diagnosed in pretty dramatic fashion. And I'd become very suicidal, acutely suicidal, and was self-injuring. And so I checked myself into McLean. And after that, was on disability and set about trying to figure it out. My master's in public health at my back, and a lot of people who had some knowledge about it. And a spouse at the time who was very supportive. And I met Rick during this really still intense period. And so we ended up having a lot of conversations about trauma and about the things that happen to people that other people minimize, don't notice, are uncomfortable with, would rather not see, how it impacts our relationships, romantic relationships, friendships. We shared that.
Right, and then you've also started an organization, right?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the name of your organization?
The organization is Other Lives.
Other Lives.
So it's at otherlives.org. It's a peer support network and advocacy organization for trauma survivors based on self-identification. We attempt to be intersectional. Trauma happens in all demographics and all groups, and we are pro everything as long as you show up with to talk about your own experience and don't violate anybody's stated boundaries. So we have a forum. It's forum.otherlives.org, and anybody's welcome to come. The
All right.
culture there is really wonderful.
And Other Lives, I went to his website and I said, wow, there's so much information here. Joe, I'm going to have you back on for your own show. So we're going to invite Joe back on. Hopefully sometime in June, we'll find a date when we're both available, and we're going to delve into Other Lives. And if you're someone out there who's struggling, maybe he has the answer for you. So we're going to come back to Other Lives. So let me ask you, is there something that you did not know about Rick that you learned after his death?
Well, at the memorial service, everybody came up and told stories. And, one thing was things that I had suspected about Rick just being fully confirmed, where somebody told a story about like they were locked out and, they really had to go to the bathroom and they ended up peeing on themselves. And so Rick was just like, oh, well, do you want my pants? And it's like, I knew he was a nice guy. I didn't know he was that nice. And we like one of the running jokes being a bike courier with Rick and sharing bags, we constantly complained about each other's smell. And there were a lot of other people telling some good stories about, Rick's shoes. They just weren't allowed in the house because Rick smelled. And so, there were a lot of little things, and, again, the extent to how far out of his way he would go for someone else that he considered to be a friend like that. That was, again, something I had suspected, but I got real confirmation on.
Right, so that was confirmed after his death through the stories that people told you. What about you, Joe? Was there something you learned about him after his death?
Similarly with Shah, it was a confirmation of what I already suspected, that Rick had an amazing number of amazing people in his life. And I got to meet them in very unfortunate circumstances, but I got to meet Rick's other best friends. And confirmation, they're amazing people. And it was just so clear to me that the dynamic that him and I had together and the way that it felt, that he clearly had this with so many other people. And so to hear other people talking about what Rick meant to them was like, yeah, I know that guy. I know that guy. I didn't see him quite like that, but I know that guy. He had a big circle. He was beautiful. It was beautiful.
He was a lot like chocolate cake, where like carrot cake. If you bring carrot cake into a room and you offer carrot cake to somebody, you're gonna get 50-50 people being like, yeah, sure, I'll have some carrot cake, or ooh, no, I don't like carrot cake. But chocolate cake, you'd be hard pressed to find a room full of people that won't all just be like, yes, give me some of that chocolate cake.
Even if you don't want chocolate cake, you'll still have chocolate cake.
People just be like, I really shouldn't, but I'll have a slice.
Right. That's kind of how I felt drinking with them sometimes. I really shouldn't.
I like that. If you're just joining us tonight, my guests are Shah Paul and Joe King. They are two friends of Rick Archer, and Rick Archer sadly was killed by a hit-and-run driver on his bicycle in the early morning hours. He was hit in the early morning hours on April 30th, and then he died 2 days later. So we're kind of celebrating his life and learning things about Rick that we would not have known otherwise from his two best friends. So how are you guys doing? I mean, this was a traumatic incident. What are you doing to cope?
Well, I've been trying to stay busy, and another thing about all of the great people that Rick has in his life is like the support network that I had was just multiplied, and I'm getting texts every day from people that I did not meet until being at the hospital at MGH with Rick, and so yeah, I've been trying to push it out of thought until I can sit down with my therapist.
And especially, I mean, both of you, but you know, obviously you were with Rick. You were with him when the accident happened, and that's obviously very, very, very traumatic. Very traumatic. And I read somewhere that you wanted to chase the guy down, but
Yeah. So when the first thing that I did after it happened was I sprinted off, like after the car, and got like to the corner. And then, you know, just was like, what am I doing? Like, Rick is back there. And, you know, like, it was a moment of, like, slight chaos in my head in terms of, like, am I trying to get revenge on this person? Am I trying to, like, catch them? Am I trying to, you know, take care of my friend? But, yeah, so after that, you know, 30 or 40 seconds of panic, I calmed down and...
and then you turned around and obviously went back.
I turned around, I went back.
When you went back, were there other people, or had there? I know it was early morning.
There was an Uber driver and a man on a moped who were farther down the road behind us. The Uber driver had said that the car had actually passed him going in excess of 50 miles an hour. So the Uber driver drove up and actually like stopped behind us, put on his hazards, and called 911, and was like a big help in terms of, you know, like taking care of like the immediate situation, like while we waited for the ambulance to get there.
Okay. And how are you coping, Joe?
Trying to get back to taking care of myself in a way that makes sense, you know. Exercise, sleep, diet, all that, and also focusing on work. Trying to figure out how to build the organization, other lives, and thinking about how to move, maybe, you know, have more of a presence in the community. We're online only right now, but this made me start thinking about that. Meeting you, meeting Laura Everett, meeting a few people in the community that I hadn't known before who are doing real work. And you know, who have voices and you know, who are those people that people come to. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And you know, I also want to note that, you know, I felt a little bit like you know, Rick had a lot of best friends, and I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of people that aren't here right now in this room that I feel like maybe should be here instead of me. Y'all know who you are, but. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Sure. Well, you guys are very brave, and I'm so happy that you were able to come in this evening. You know, I speak from somebody who's lost two best friends, you know, at very young ages, so it's definitely not easy. It's very hard. You will get stronger. We may never know why something like this has happened. You will get stronger, but it's very, you know, some people don't realize that, sure, you know, it wasn't your mother or your brother or your sister, but, you know, you still feel the same hurt from losing a best friend. Do either of you have any comments to the driver? Anything you want to say to the driver?
I don't have anything to say to the driver personally, but, you know, just for anybody else out there that drives a car, like, you know, it's really easy to lose like what's going on outside of the car when you're in the car because you're in your own little world, but like there are other people out there, and a person on a bike, I get it, man, you're running late for work or you're really tired and you want to get home, but you could kill somebody, you can end somebody's life just because they're just trying to get home too.
Joe, any comments to the driver?
No, I don't have any comments for the driver. I just want to echo what Shah said, and really just I want to beg drivers in the city who drive and who have not biked in the city, because most of us have driven. I have a car. Shah can drive. A lot of people I know have driver's licenses. We know what it's like to be on both sides of it. The empathy gap only goes one way. Most all of us know what it's like to be annoyed by a cyclist while we're driving a car. Very few people who drive know what it's like to be terrified of the car that's behind them. They don't know how close close it actually is, how it feels. Just stop dehumanizing us, please. Please, please, please. We break. Skin will burn right off. It'll come right off on the asphalt. Please just don't hurt us. That's it.
Please just don't hurt us. That's it. So that's a really, really important point. It's, you know, sometimes I feel that maybe drivers should have to ride a bike before they get a license, or, you know, so they can know how it feels. You know, I'm somebody also who bikes and drives, and it's very terrifying. If there's a car coming up fast behind you or a big truck and you can just sense that it's close and you don't know if they're going to hit you. So drivers, slow down. You know, as a driver, you never want to hit and kill somebody because you don't want to live the rest of your life knowing that. And obviously, you don't want to ruin somebody else's family. So it's really important that drivers, summer's coming, you know, it's the end of May, next week is Memorial Day weekend. So just slow down. Take a little extra time. It's okay if you're going to be late for work or late for school, or next time, you know, leave a little bit earlier, but just be careful and always look over your right shoulder before you make that right turn, because sometimes cyclists just, you know, they're in the bike lane and you may not see them. And that's called the right hook. That's called the right hook. So that's very, very, very important. So I want to thank Shah Paul and Joe King for coming in tonight to talk to me about their friend Richard Archer, who was tragically killed by a hit-and-run cyclist or hit-and-run driver on April 30th, and he died on May 2nd. And it's just very important for drivers, cyclists, everyone, you know, be aware of your surrounding, especially drivers. And if you do hit, if you are involved in an accident, stop. Just stop. You know, see if the person's okay. You don't have to run off. And if you run off, there's so many cameras around, you're going to be found. So it's just better that you actually stop. So look, thanks for joining me tonight. I am the lady in the yellow jacket, and Melanie Morris, and we'll see you next week.